Hello, my name is Jennifer Small, and I'm the creator of the Discount Bookshop podcast and also play the role of Jess. As it's getting towards the second anniversary of the podcast, I thought it might be interesting to do a Q&A on how I make the podcast, because over the time I've done it, people have asked me all sorts of questions, and I thought, they might be quite helpful for people to know if you're interested in making a podcast yourself, or you're starting one now and you need some tips, or you're just interested and or you listen to the podcast and you want to know how it's made, all sorts of things. So I'm just going to answer a few questions here that I have answered to people in real life. And yeah, I hope it's helpful to some or all. Just in case people haven't listened to my podcast, the Discount Bookshop podcast, I'm just going to give you a quick overview of the podcast, the concepts of the podcast, the characters, etc., just so you get an idea of what we're talking about here that I've made. So my podcast is a scripted comedy podcast, so it's not just like a chatty interview podcast. It's that's fine, but it's just different from that. It's a scripted one, so it involves me writing the script, and basically it's about a person called Jess, who is the supervisor in a discount bookshop called the Discount Bookshop, and basically she's been asked by head office to make a podcast for the company because she's shown an interest in the arts and has a background in the arts because she went to university and did drama. So they've asked her to make a company podcast, and she agreed to do it because it meant that she didn't have to work so much in the shop. It meant that like a few shifts a month she could just do the podcast and get paid for it instead of working in the shop, because she doesn't like customers. And but unfortunately for head office, she can't really be bothered to do a good job because she knows that they don't listen to it. So she just kind of does whatever she wants, and she doesn't bother editing it properly. There's mistakes that she leaves in, all sorts of things. So she's not very keen on making it a high quality podcast, but she wants to keep doing it so that she doesn't have to talk to customers, basically. And who can blame her? Okay, so now on with the questions. So I have my notes behind the camera. Just if I look behind the camera, that is why. So the first question is, do you have much experience in writing? I don't have any experience writing professionally. However, I did GCSE, A-level and university drama in some way. And all of those places involved devising theatre. It's funny because when I did all of those things, which is 7 years of stuff, I always used to really annoy me because we used to mostly devise our own stuff. And it always annoyed me because I was like, there are loads of scripts in the world. Why can't we just act the scripts that already exist? Why do we have to write our own stuff? And, it's a lot harder to devise your own stuff because you have to make it from scratch. You have to come up with your own ideas and all these things and make it into some, full project that people can actually watch. But now look at me. Now look what's happened. I've ended up making my own stuff. So it turns out it's actually been quite useful to do that. So whilst I don't have any professional experience writing, I have a lot of experience making my own stuff out of nothing, and although this podcast is based on my experiences, it's definitely been a devised piece that I've had to make myself. And so that is my writing experience, is having to for school, basically. So yeah, that's how much experience I have in writing. Okay, question 2 is how long does it take you to write an episode? It usually takes about 2 or 3 days. Typically, I write in the afternoon. But to be honest, I would say 2 or 3 afternoons. I have in the past, on actually a few episodes, I have written in one day. But that is very unusual. Very unusual. Normally, if I know that I'm having a guest, I'll try and write that bit first so that bit's done. In case so that it's done in time to record with the guest, and then I can kind of go back and write the beginning and end because they're easier to write. So that's but typically it takes about 2 or 3 days. Okay, question 3 is, what do you do if you don't have motivation to make the podcast? Well, now, motivation's a funny one, because I decided right from the beginning that I needed to make... I really wanted an episode to come out a month. And originally I didn't necessarily want it to always come out on the 1st, but it just kind of happens like that, the 1st of the month when each episode comes out. So I have to have the motivation because I've got a bit of a deadline that I've given myself because I want it to come out on the 1st. But motivation's a funny one because the main problem for me is finding motivation to write, because it's the bit I find most difficult. Once I've written it, I find it quite easy to record it because you just kind of follow the script and sort of record as you go and whatever. But like the writing is the bit that's like, you know, is the like original stuff and like the creative stuff and putting your ideas onto paper. I don't have a problem with coming up with ideas, but for me it's like putting it into a script format. And sometimes, like, you know, I'm an overthinker, so sometimes I think I kind of get overwhelmed by all the ideas I have, and then the motivation kind of goes away. So basically, if I don't have the motivation to write, what I do, but I need to write, is I try to, I like listen to some music that's like just instrumental that won't distract me, because otherwise I'll start singing along. And usually at the moment it's been Nintendo music. I don't know how that's happened, but it seems to be working. And then I just kind of, usually that kind of relaxes me. It feels more fun. It kind of makes the writing feel more fun, but it's not distracting me, and then I can kind of type away. If I can't find the motivation, sometimes I just give up and try another day, to be honest, because I just know myself too well to know if I'm not motivated and I'm not getting motivation, I might as well just stop. You know, it's a complete waste of time otherwise. So yeah, so to find motivation, I try and listen to some like instrumental music while I'm writing to try and make it seem more fun, try and trick my mind into thinking writing is fun. And if I can't find motivation, I just try again another day. Okay, next question is, why did you call your character Jess? Well, there's a very specific story, because when I first started working in a shop, I used to work with someone who, on her first day, she thought my name was Jess. And instead of like Jenny, she thought it was Jess. I don't know whether she misheard me or whether she just kind of forgot and then, I don't know, just corrected it as Jess. I don't know what. But basically, I have a history of being called Jessica by accident instead of Jennifer. So, and historically, I found it really annoying, and it's given me a dislike for the name Jessica, because so many people call me Jessica by accident. But for some reason on that occasion when she kept calling me Jess, I just thought it was really funny. So I just let her call me Jess for like half a day. She'd be like, Jess? And I was like, yeah. And then about halfway through the day, I was like, oh, by the way, my name's not Jess. So it was inevitable that my character was going to be called Jess, because, it's a story, It's a story. Okay, next question is, how do you get ideas for each episode? I have a really long list of ideas that I've just written down when I've thought of them. And they're like usually based on they're always based on experiences, the things that I write down, real life experiences I've had working in retail. And so quite often I use those. I find that usually I do have an idea already for like what I want to do next, which I don't really know where it comes from, but I just have an idea. But if I don't, I can like look at my ideas notebook. But another thing that I do that might be quite interesting to know is that because I know that it's coming out in a certain month, I know that it's coming out in March or whatever, I sometimes Google if there are any significant days. Like sometimes it'll be like, so say if I know it's coming out in like October or November, I might do like a Halloween episode because Halloween's like in October or it's just happened in November. But other times there'll be days like there's an episode that I made called Make Music Day, which I think is episode 10. And Make Music Day is a real day that I found, and it's based, I don't know, just some national day or international day where like the idea is you make your own music. And I had this piece of music that I made when I was at university, because we had, my course was like film, TV, and stage, so we did a lot of editing, and and we had this lesson where we were like making our own music, Make Music Day. And I'd made my own music inspired by Ratatouille, and I really wanted to use it somewhere because I was really proud of it, because I'm not a particularly musical person. And so Make Music Day, it just turned out, was in the day that I was doing that episode, and it fitted really well with the storyline with my guest in that episode, and I got to use my music. So sometimes I'm just Googling random, like National Nutella Day and all these things. Sometimes they lead to something interesting, because it's the kind of thing that sometimes the kind of things that you might celebrate in a retail environment, because head office would be like, oh, it's this random day coming up, you should do like a window display for that, so it kind of works well like that. So that's where I get my ideas, either from Googling random days, or like things like Christmas, or whenever it comes out, the month it comes out in, or I already have an idea, or I have to look in my book of notes for ideas. Okay, next question. Why did you decide to make something about working in retail? I mean, again, it comes from personal experiences working in retail. It's no secret that working in retail is very entertaining and challenging. Customers are irritating, but you have to pretend that they're not. And sometimes it's easier than others to pretend that they're not. But being annoyed by customers can also be very funny. There are sometimes tiny little things that customers do that just really irritate you, even though like it's not that big a deal. Like one of the biggest ones I have to say is like when people ask where something is and it's literally right in front of them, but they just can't be bothered to look. They'll just ask like, where the pens are, and they're stood right in front of the pens. Things like that, when you first start working there, it's like, oh, well, that's how ridiculous that they didn't see, and then after a while, it really grates on you. So the the amount of irritation that you feel, I do find quite funny. And also with retail, because you're working with the public, all sorts of things happen. You meet all sorts of people. You get regular customers, you get people who've never been before, you get people who are just passing through and never been to the town before. So there's loads of opportunity for like new characters, and loads of opportunity for new storylines. The discount bookshop, like Jess's branch in my podcast, her shop is in a shopping centre, so they have like other shops within the shopping centre to deal with, and like the shopping centre, like like manager, and security, like all sorts of people, it's just like a really kind of rich environment for loads of different characters, loads of different people, and it's just a really good opportunity for like, you to come across loads of different characters, or, because you're working with the public, and they're very entertaining as always. But yeah, so that is why I decided to make something about working in retail. Okay, next question. Where do you get your music and sound effects from? I make them all myself. When I first started the podcast, I needed sound effects. I don't know if I used any music in the beginning, but I needed sound effects. And I'm never really sure what the rules are with using sound effects. I think you can use royalty-free sound effects and like not have a problem with copyright or anything. But I was always very aware that this was like an original thing I was making, and I didn't like, if later down the line I kind of carried on making it more and more and more, I didn't want to then come across copyright problems from the beginning, you know, that I'd used from the beginning. So I just thought, you know what, I'm just gonna try and make my own music and sound effects and whatever, and just see how I get on. And basically I've done that ever since. So the sound effects that you hear are ones that I've just recorded. So like the sound of the door opening and closing, that is something I recorded. And in every episode you hear like back in the background you can hear like noise of the shop downstairs. That is what I recorded. Just trying to think of anything other significant. There's some like, sometimes you hear like Jess's phone, you can hear like a text tone. That is something, yeah. So there's all sorts of things. If I make music, I make it in GarageBand. And so like there's some music at the beginning of the Halloween episode, which I made in GarageBand. Yeah, so if there's music, I made it in GarageBand. And if there's sound effects, I just recorded them somewhere. Yeah, so basically I just did it myself. I would much prefer to like just do everything original and make everything myself, you know, rather than come into complications later. I was just like, oh, just, you know what, sometimes it's easier doing it the hard way the first time, and then you know that you're sorted. So yeah, the theme tune as well, which has just come out in a few episodes ago, it's not in all the episodes. That I made myself as well on GarageBand. So yeah, I would highly recommend making your own stuff. Or if you know people, you know, maybe ask them to do it. I don't know, but I just think it's easier making it myself, to be quite honest. So yeah, so music, sound effects, made them all myself. How did you decide to do one episode a month? Well, in the beginning, I had no idea how frequently I wanted to make them. But all I did know is that I really wanted it to be consistent. I really wanted it to be like, if people listen to the podcast, they know when it comes out. They know, like originally, it wasn't necessarily going to be the first of every month. It was just going to be, there was one per month. But then at least people would know that at some point per month, you know, there'd be like a half-hour episode. But it ended up being just on the first of the month that I just managed to do it every month. So, yeah, so it ended up just being that. And the reason I do one a month is because I feel like it's like a really manageable amount, you know, along with all the other things I'm doing in life. It was something where it like didn't take up a huge amount of my time, that I couldn't find the time to do it each month. If I'd done one a week, it would have driven me insane. I think I would have lasted like a week. Like literally like a week, you know, because each episode is, I try and make it about half an hour, usually about like 27 minutes, 28 minutes, something like that, kind of TV show length. So there's no way I could have kept that up once a week. I mean, if you're like doing it full time or whatever, then, you know, that's fine, but I'm doing it amongst many other things. So yeah, so I really wanted to make sure I could consistently, whether I had hardly anything on that month or whether I was really busy that month, I wanted a consistency where I could like find the time to do that and be able to deliver the same thing. For ages it was just one, so it's about the full episode that I do. Each episode is about half an hour once a month. But then recently I've added some poem videos, which I release on the 15th of every month. So that's like another little thing I've added on. But they are quite quick and easy to make, so they're not that much of like an extra thing. When I just kind of wanted to add something to kind of step it up a bit. And the poem videos are just what I chose to step up. So that's how I decided to do one a month, basically, because I wanted to make sure that I could consistently do one a month. And if people listen every month, they know what to expect. They know it comes out at this time, on this day, it's going to be about this length. So yes, because I find it really annoying when you never know when the next one's going to come out for something, whether it's TV show or whatever it is, you know. Consistency is key. So that's why. Okay, had a few technical difficulties there, which is something that you can expect when you have a podcast. So the next question is, what editing software do you use? I use Audacity, which is a free editing software to edit audio. So if you make a video podcast, you won't be able to use that, but you can use it to edit just audio episodes. And what microphone do you use? I use the Samsung Q2U recording and podcasting pack. That's what it was called when I bought it. Samsung Q2U microphone. Q, the letter Q, number 2, letter U. That was just the Audacity and that microphone were just the ones that were recommended the most when I was like researching which ones to use initially, and I found them both to be really good, and I've used them ever since. So I would recommend using Audacity to edit your podcast, and the Samsung Q2U microphone too. It's a USB microphone you just plug straight into your computer, and I found it really good. How long does it take you to edit the podcast? If I don't, basically I edit the podcast just in chronological order, usually, but actually always. I just kind of record it and then edit it as I go. So I'll follow the script, record the beginning, and I'll just basically record like a few lines, then listen back, check it's okay, and then edit it if I need to, and then just keep doing it like that. If I have a guest in the episode, we pre-record the dialogue that we record. So then I edit the first bit that I've recorded, slot in the bit with the guest and edit that, and then I record the end. But usually it takes about 3 to 4 hours, I'd say, to do the actual editing. It's hard to tell because I kind of do it while I'm doing the recording, but I think maybe it's less if it, I don't know. It's around about that time. It's kind of, they go hand in hand, recording and editing. So I'd say about 3 to 4 hours for each episode. Why did you decide to set the podcast in the stock room of the Discount Bookshop? That is a good question. I decided to set it there rather than like on the shop floor because I wanted it to be like Jess was recording the podcast from the stock room. Because I just thought then, like, you've got you can hear people downstairs in the background in the shop, you can hear the hustle and bustle of the shop, and you occasionally have people coming into the stockroom, usually Jess's manager Andrew, to like come in and interrupt things and change the pace of things a bit. He'll come upstairs to like complain about a customer or to come and find something or ask a question or whatever. So there's like people to interrupt rather than just Jess recording the podcast at home. But it's not on the shop floor, it's kind of away from it, so it's kind of private but also still in the shop. I just felt like it was a good way for characters to kind of come in and out, change the pace a little bit, and I liked the background noise of the shop downstairs, so that kind of makes it a bit more interesting than you just hearing, the characters talking all the time. Why did you decide to make a podcast rather than a video series? I actually did originally think about making a video series because I just, I thought with acting, I'm not used to just doing like voice acting and just, doing audio. I'm used to acting. But ultimately it was just it was kind of like a logistical thing. It was just a lot easier doing it audio because with video, you have to have the right costumes. You don't have to, but really I would have wanted to have the right costumes. You'd have had to have some sort of set. There was nowhere I could have filmed it realistically without hiring out a space, which I didn't want to do. And then it would have been harder to have other characters, because I voice other characters as well, not just Jess. So sometimes my characters will have conversations. I'll have conversations with myself, my character's talking to another character that I voice. And it was just a lot easier to create the world in audio, I felt, because then the audience, when you hear the background noise of the shop and you say where you are, the audience can just imagine it. You don't really need to have a video where it shows you. I felt like the audio just was easier to create the world. It was easier logistically, and I don't know, it was just all round a better idea for now. It would be nice to do something visual in the future, but at the moment it was just the best choice for now. Okay, and the last question for now is the Discount is the Discount Bookshop on Spotify? A few people have asked me if it's on Spotify, and it is. It is on quite a lot of different things now. Currently, I'm just going to read my notes. It's currently on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Spotify for Podcasters, aka Anchor, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Audible, and Radio Public. And it also has its own IMDb profile, so you can check it out via there as well. The best place to go is if you go on the YouTube channel. You can either listen to it on there, watch the videos I have on there, or if you go to the, I think it's the About section on my YouTube channel, it has like all the links to all the places you can listen to it. So yes, it is on Spotify. It's on many, many different places now, thankfully. Well, that's all the questions I have for now. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, please consider giving this video a like, subscribe for more content. If you haven't already listened to the Discount Bookshop podcast, my podcast, please check it out. It's available on this YouTube channel and apps, YouTube podcast apps, all over the place. There are links to it on the YouTube channel anyway. If anyone has any questions that I haven't answered in this video, feel free to put a comment, and I will do my best to A those cues. And if anyone is trying to make their own podcast, and I hope this has helped you out somewhat, and good luck with making your podcast. And yeah, thank you for watching. I hope this has been interesting. Right, thanks a lot.